Hello and welcome to A Taste for the Road. My name is Scott and welcome to this Royal Enfield Himalayan. So this is a bike that has intrigued me for a couple of years after Royal Enfield decided to bring it here to the States for the 2018 model year. I spent a bit of time in India, New Delhi and Hyderabad, as well as to the south, Chennai. This bike actually is built just outside of the city, and south to Pondicherry as well, and some other global growth markets. It's intriguing too because Pierre Terblanche, if I'm pronouncing his last name correctly, which penned a number of important Ducatis a number of years back. There's the 999 and 749, which were a bit controversial then, but much beloved now, as well as the Sport Classics, which are quite sought after. A couple of Moto Guzzi's as well, and some other bikes too. What's also appealing about it is that it's got some performance chops behind it, I think. Harris Performance of the UK, which has built Grand Prix motorcycles, World Superbike bikes, helped one John McGuinness early in his TT career, and Royal Enfield actually bought the company in 2016, helped basically build the chassis for this motorcycle. And I think finally the other appealing bit about this bike is an all-arounder for global markets, having centered itself in India, obviously, are folks such as fellow YouTuber Itchy Boots, who has taken her bike 36,000 kilometers thus far in Africa, all over the Middle East and through Iran, Eastern Europe as well, as she's from Holland. Is going to pretty shortly, as of the time of this video being created here in late September, going to be heading off from Patagonia up to Alaska, and she has had overall quite a sensible and good experience with this particular Himalayan. And I think that's worth noting because there has been criticism about whether or not this really was, or is, something that has the chops to traverse difficult terrain, and it clearly does. So I think a great place to start here is around the practical aspects of it, because this is actually a sensible bike, And let's start with the ergonomics. So I'm sitting quite upright. It's really quite comfortable. The seat's firm, but does have some push to it. Hands readily fall to the clutch and throttle area. The throttle is long and gentle, which is certainly nice, I think, for the types of roads that this bike excels at. The rider triangle also really quite comfortable too, and gives you a sense that you can actually go ahead and just relax, sit down, which is the preferred method for, if you will, adventure or dual sporting a bit in Asia, as opposed to standing up for those of us in the West. And that, as being a smaller guy, this thing fits me really quite nicely, although the gentleman who owns it is comfortably over 6 feet and enjoys the seating position and everything else around the ergonomics as well. The dash is, of course, readily at hand, simple dials, and easy to read whether you're at a standstill or, as I am, puttering along at a little bit under 50 miles an hour. Again, it's just a very comfortable, easy bike to ride. Great stability as well. It's something where it does require, as we go through a bit of a curve here, although of course the GoPro will flatten it, that the position of everything just works out very, very nicely. On the performance front, just to cite a few statistics, as I'm sure you've probably seen them elsewhere, this produces 24.5 horsepower at about 6,500 RPM, about 26 foot-pounds of torque at about 4,500, although they quote a slightly bigger range than that. And you can definitely feel that here. The story is certainly around the torque, and pushing the bike or accelerating from, say, 1,500 up to about 5K is about where it's really most happy. It'll thunder along at 2,000 RPM or so, or even a little bit less than that, without a real hiccup at all on some back dirt roads that I was enjoying earlier today, and then out here on the pavement, which is also pretty decent as well. I would say comfortable top speed is around 50 miles an hour, which for many roads, not all certainly, is pretty good. And for the back roads that I'm on here today outside of Poolesville, Maryland, in the western part of Montgomery County. It's about, for those of you not from the area, excuse me, I would say probably in the neighborhood of around 35 miles or so west of Washington, D.C. Not that far away at all. On the topic of competition, I think it's actually quite an interesting topic. So there are, of course, the 300cc Japanese bikes that are available. One example would be the Versys. There are others. They happen to produce more power, have different configurations in terms of how you feel that you might want to sit in it versus on it. There are, of course, dedicated 250 dirt bikes that also have more power, have been around forever and are exceptionally well proven. But again, I think that bike is, or bike series, if you will, is a bit different in that you're on it as opposed to in it. And this is a bike where you are absolutely sitting in it. And there are some nice attributes or nice benefits of that. BMW GS310, of course, can't miss that. Also made in India, more money, but also built to a higher standard. Critically has alloys as opposed to the spokes here and on other bikes. And then, of course, there's the forthcoming, or potentially, I should say, forthcoming KTM 390, which should be, or could be, a very interesting choice in the space. I think in terms of how that pans out for people, each person, of course, needs to make their own choice. I prefer sitting in as opposed to on. This would be, I think, more appealing to me in terms of being able to put on, hard panniers if you wanted to do so for global travel. Of course, there's the bars up here up front that would be great for some canisters of fuel, water. Obviously, other materials could be draped all over this bike. It's a sensible and very practical design, and what I think that, again, is reflecting what the intent of this bike is, beyond, of course, that it's actually, in my opinion, quite an attractive little buggy and has that sensible and purposeful look to it and stance that just says, I'm ready to go pretty much anywhere, whenever you are. In the areas of weakness, there are several, and number one on my list overwhelmingly is the front brake. Others have noted it, and it absolutely is something that is, I think, just barely acceptable. You absolutely need to use all four fingers to pull this thing right back to the bar in order to get some braking pressure, and there is absolutely no feel. It is incredibly wooden, to the point where I actually, at times, only now in the afternoon, have been able to figure out where that delicate pressure point actually is to modulate it. The rear brake, interestingly enough, is actually really quite good. For pronouncing it correctly, Vibre, which is a subsidiary, Brembo subsidiary in India, has done the work there, and you can absolutely feel a monumental difference between the front and the rear. I was performing off camera some newly acquired police skills, which basically means going ahead and applying back brake pressure, no front, and just clutching a little bit of throttle, and it was very, very nice and very easy to modulate. So that was certainly appreciated. I think number two on my list is going to be this screen. So it's nice to have a little bit of coverage and to have some wind management, but the reality of the matter is that it is, even for me as a bit of a shorty at only 5'7", it buffets me in ways that is not always very pleasant, and that as a result I do feel and do hear this low-grade hum that has been rather frustrating today, and I'm hoping that when this video goes live you will not hear it. And then I think finally in the area of compromise is probably the power. I realize the mandate for this bike, and it's a very sensible one, it's not about horsepower, it's about torque, but I do feel, as a number of others have noted, that an extra 10 horsepower would not go missing. It is on country lanes, as I've spent most of the day today, more than adequate, and up to 50 miles an hour is a very comfortable machine. She is quite happy humming along as we are right now, almost at 50 miles an hour or so here in fifth gear. It will do more than that, but it's not particularly happy. And once you get above, say, 5,500 RPMs, you do feel for the first time some buzz in the bars, fuzz in the pegs, and below that you simply don't, which is not something I expected and has been very welcome today, unlike some motorcycles where they have some wonderful character, but you do feel a little bit numb by the end of the day. This is actually not one of them. It's been a remarkably civilized motorcycle in this regard. Around the topic of value, I think it's actually a very, very interesting topic, because this is a bike that retailed when it was first released here in the States at $4,500. It is now a little bit more at $4,750 before taxes and tags and trinkets and whatnot. And while there are certainly other motorcycles out there that are around the same price point, the Japanese 250 dirt bikes, for example, obviously you could pick something used, but I'll continue to focus on new for comparison's sake. It's just very interesting that, you know, for what you get as a global motorcycle that will take you pretty much absolutely anywhere, not at great speed, but you simply will be able to get there, and that there will be teams, individuals, no matter where you are in the world, including yourself, of course, who could work on this thing and perform pretty much any sort of maintenance task. And there really aren't, I don't think, quite as many motorcycles as we might think that there are that can genuinely have you sitting in the motorcycle as opposed to kind of on top of it, or force you to buy used as opposed to new, if that's something that's important to you. And when you look at folks such as YouTuber Itchy Boots, who I mentioned a few minutes ago, who has traveled extensively, had some problems, but I can't imagine that you would not in any motorcycle. After all, the gentleman who did Long Way Around broke frames and had quite a bit of work to do, and their cameraman ultimately dumped his and bought a cheap Russian bike in order to complete the journey. So I think in the value department, it's very, very impressive. As I always do, I check out Cycle Trader, etc. And across the US as a whole, I found 3 used Himalayans. That's it. There were a number of 2019s available new from dealers, but only could I find 3, which tells me that the people who bought them, and there were no 2018s available for sale anywhere across the US, they are keeping them, and they are obviously satisfied with them to a degree that communicates, hey, this is something special, it hits some important buttons that I really like, and it's a keeper. So how to sum up this Royal Himalayan today? For me, I really enjoy the Spartan simplicity of the bike, the design cues that harken to, I think, a rather handsome purposefulness, the ease with which you can ride this bike on, back dirt trails or pavement, as I am today on some very lovely back roads. It's an easy bike to ride for someone new to the sport, or someone who's more experienced and might enjoy something heading on some back tracks, or frankly around the world. The ergonomics are also really quite nice. I enjoy the putt-putt of the single cylinder motor. It's got some good character, provided that you don't rev it to the moon or attempt to do so, and you work within its limits. The simplicity of maintenance, you can do pretty much anything to this bike on the side of the road or around the world, and there are lots of people, I think, who can help you in one way or another to get yourself going again. And then, of course, the mileage and the price. I've been getting about 70 miles a gallon today, which has been pretty much spot on. And it's ultimately a very affordable motorcycle to spend time heading back and forth to work. If you're in an urban setting, this will work very nicely there, or obviously much, much farther afield. The weaknesses, they're pretty easy. Front brake, this screen, and engine power above 50 miles an hour on faster roads. This is a bike that absolutely rewards for being on back stretches of pavement or dirt between, say, 20 and 50 miles an hour, as I am right now, and just putters along in such an easy way. Ultimately, I think the real success of this bike is around encouraging people to go ahead and try something that they haven't done before. This is a very approachable machine, and for those who have, say, a much more expensive dual sport or adventure bike that might be even 30K and still be making payments on it, would you actually go ahead and push yourself to quite the same degree and potentially, or be concerned about dropping it, do $6 grand worth of damage, and frankly you would have been able to buy one of these new and still had change left over. So I think for me the ultimate framework for this bike, once you straddle it, put your hands on the bars, is to just be a little bit patient with it. It's not the fastest, and your friends will certainly get from point A to point B more quickly, but I'm not convinced that they'll always be enjoying it as much as you will if you go ahead and take these back roads, enjoy the scents and the sounds and what this experience has to offer. So I think that pretty much sums this video up. I hope you enjoyed it and found it informative. Please give it a thumbs up if you can, subscribe, and ring the little bell to be alerted to new videos as they become available. There'll be a traditional written review of this bike on tastefortheroad.com. I'll include a link below. Most importantly, please go out and create your own adventure, whether it's to see something that you do know in a new way or to see something completely new, and then share that with us in the comments below. I always respond to each comment, and for those of you who've joined, about 25 of you actually, since the Moto Guzzi review went live a month ago, thank you very much. And with that, I think I will go ahead and bid you adieu, and I will see you in the next video. Ciao.